Okay. We are doing these online Inyani Geulu Mashiach shiurim, these online Mashiach classes, and we know that the Rebbe says that the fastest and easiest and simplest way to bring Mashiach is by learning about Mashiach and making it real to you. So I think this course about Mashiach is really, really an important thing, and hopefully we'll do it in a way that, at the end of it, people will really have a good grasp on what Mashiach is all about. And I wanted to start today with a very important start. Why is Mashiach so important? So that really includes a few things, and including them is where's the source for Mashiach in it being such a important part of Judaism, and why is that? So I wanted to start with Maimonides. Maimonides, besides for all of the books that he has, in one of them he lists 13 principles of Jewish belief. And the 12th and the 13th one is also connected to this, are all about Mashiach, that I believe in Mashiach and that we await for Mashiach. And that really is the best source to say why that where Mashiach has an important part of Judaism is that it's the fundamental, it's the principle that Maimonides already it makes very clear. Another thing, this first of all, this brings upon the question: what is Mashiach that is so important? And I just want to quote another Gemara, which I didn't bring down here, but there's a Gemara which says that the world was created for Mashiach. So now we really have to understand what's so important about Mashiach, that the world was created for Mashiach. What is this Mashiach? So I'm going to give a little bit of an introduction. This isn't right away going to have anything to do with it, but soon we'll see. In order to understand if the world was created for Mashiach, you have to really understand what is Judaism's approach on why was the world created? What is the purpose of the world? So the first Rashi, right? Rashi writes along the Torah. He writes a commentary on the whole Chumash, and the first one is actually, this isn't the first one. I'm sorry. This is on the first verse, but it's not the first one. It's the second one. And the second Rashi, before we read it, I'll give a little bit of introduction. Because he's really asking a question here and giving an answer, but he doesn't do that. What's bothering Rashi is the wording of the verse. The first verse in the Torah, the first pasuk is Bereshis bara Elokim es hashamayim v'saaretz, and everybody loves to translate it. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth, or the heavens and the earth. And really, if you know Hebrew, that's not a correct translation, because Bereshis does not mean in the beginning. So over here, actually, from Chabad.org's translation, which I quoted on the screen, it says in the beginning of God's creation. But that also isn't fair to the even though Rashi does say that later also, but it's it really isn't also fair to the words, because Bereshis would really literally mean in the beginning of. So in the beginning of is not a in the beginning of God created the heavens and the earth is not a grammatically correct statement. So therefore Rashi goes ahead and he says, In hamikra haza Eimer ala darshani. This verse shouts out, explain me or interpret me. Kamaisha darshu Rabbi Sinu is Rashi is just quoting. He's not he's just gonna bring from he's gonna bring from a letter of Rabbi Akiva that what the explanation for this verse is. So what Rashi is about to say is he goes on and he explains that if you're going to explain Bereshis in the beginning of, there's another way to explain it. You could literally read it Bereshis with Rashis. And if you're going to explain it that way, read it literally, then you're going to have to go ahead and look up what Rashis means. So he gives two options. Bishvil HaTeira, Shenikres Rashis Darke, which that means is that it could be with Torah, because Torah is called Rashis. We see in Mishlei that it calls Torah Rashis, the beginning. Ubishvil Yisrael Shenikru Rashis Tvose, and in Yirmiyahu we also find that the Jews are called Rashis. So if so, then both of them. Then Bereshis can either mean with the Torah or with the Jews. And so Rashi explains that what we can say is that we can say that when God created the world, God created it with the intent he had in mind. He was having in mind two things. He had in mind the Torah and he had the Jews. When God created the world, he had in mind already that he was going to make a code, uh, something for us, he's going to create already Jews to make he's going to have a special plan for us. He wouldn't just make regular, ordinary human beings. He would also have a special type of people, the Jews, and he would also have he would also give us the Torah for us to use. So that's just the introduction for the Judaism's a very interesting idea. What the purpose, what God had when God created the world, he had us in mind. He had the Jews in mind, and he had the Torah in mind. So if so, now that we understand Judaism's description of what the world was created in mind with, then we have to go ahead and understand what is Mashiach. We want a very, very now what is Mashiach is going to take this whole course. It's going to take a lot of time to explain, but just to explain very briefly what Mashiach is what we're going to try to do a very literal halachic explanation about what Mashiach is, and that is found once again we're going back to Maimonides. Maimonides has a 14 book set called the Yad HaChazaka, or called Mishnah Torah, where he very, very well explains the entire Judaism. He goes through the entire Torah and explains it very, very well. He writes in his introduction that after the Bible, you don't need, or after the Torah, the written Torah, you do not need any other book besides for his book, but it really, really does that. It explains everything about Judaism. And the last two chapters, which is also very interesting, maybe we'll get to that in another course, that the grand finale of the Rambam was the concept of Mashiach. And also something to think about. After this explanation, it's going to be very understood that the sum total of the whole Rambam's book is Mashiach. But let's just look at his. The Rambam has two chapters, chapter 11 and chapter 12. I'm just going to read. I'm not going to do the whole thing. We'll probably cover other parts at different classes, but I want to do the first paragraph and the last paragraph, right? Anybody who knows about anybody who's a writer knows that when you write an essay, the first sentence and the last sentence, or the first little bit and the last little bit, is what sums it all up. So I'm just going to read the beginning and the end of these two chapters. He starts off saying, Hamelech HaMashiach, the King Mashiach, Asid Lamed Ulahachzar Malchus Bis David Liashna Mishal Harishena. He will stand up and he will return the kingship of the Davidic kingship, or the Davidic dynasty, to its original, the way it originally was. Ubeina HaMikdash, he will also build the holy temple, the Beis HaMikdash. Makabitz Nidchei Yisrael, he will gather all of the Jews, or the Jews who were not gathered, who are spread apart. That means to Israel, by the way. He will bring back all of the Torah, all of the commandments of the Torah, to the way it was before. Umakrivin karbanis, and he will bring, there will once again be sacrifices. And there will be Shemitah and Yevel, etc. What we just saw is that how he starts off explaining Mashiach is not by describing the great miracles or anything else. He doesn't go into a whole explanation about who the Mashiach is. He is speaking about the Messianic era. Now, Mashiach will be the messenger of God to do this. But what is the Messianic era? In very, very short, literal words, it is the ultimate of Judaism and of the Torah. When God had a plan, and it's a very, very detailed plan about how to work the world, how we should run the world. And part of it is that the Jews should follow these very detailed laws, and those we cannot do nowadays for reasons that we do not have. There are certain laws which apply to how, if you have a king, how it should be, and if you have a Beis HaMikdash, and how to bring sacrifices, and those we cannot do today. And so Mashiach is, in very literal terms, is bringing all of that back. And let's just go to the end. He also sums it up all at the end. V'isa azman lo yesham le'rav le'malchama v'le'kina v'sacharus. In that time there will not be any hunger, there will not be any war, there will not be any jealousy. There will be a lot of abundance of good. There and all pleasures will be found like a dirt. So what's going to be? So he speaks about how it's going to be an amazing time for all of humanity, and now he goes ahead and he sums it up. So what's so good about that? The whole world will have one priority, and that will be to know God. That's what we're all going to be working on, and that's really what the Torah is all about, and that's what Judaism is all about. Is that we should all be very aware about Hashem and awareness of God. And therefore, the Jews will be they will have a great extent of knowledge and understanding of God, however much a human being can understand. And that also shows that the Jews, when God created the world with us and with the Jews in mind, that there should be a nation which will really be aware of God. That the ultimate of that is when Moshiach comes. So the ultimate of Torah is when Moshiach comes. The ultimate of Jews is when Moshiach comes. So this is really, God had this in mind when he created the world at first, what we learned before. So this really is starting to come together, why Moshiach is such an integral part of Judaism. Let's just finish off. Shenamar kimol haaretz deas Hashem kamayim liyam machasim. The Rambam loves finishing off his books and even just halachos. He loves finishing off with a verse from the Torah, and that's what it all comes down to. Right before we leave, we don't have enough time for this, but we're going to do this really next class. We're going to focus on this, but I just want to finish off. Just everybody look at this this piece of Tanya in chapter 36, where the Alter Rebbe discusses Mashiach, and he says that it is the purpose of the whole creation of the world. The purpose of the world was for that God should have a dwelling place in this physical world. And we'll discuss this a lot tomorrow, but this also brings out this point that when God created the world, God wanted to have a dwelling place in this world. Now, there's a lot of explanation for that, but in a very literal sense, that all the higher worlds are very aware of God, and our physical world, we are not very aware of God. And God wanted that even in the lower world, that in a very low realm, we should be aware of God. Although this goes into doing mitzvahs and a lot more. And there's a lot more explanation. I'm just doing this very, very briefly. So we see that that's the Alter Rebbe's explanation for why Mashiach is the purpose of the world, and we'll get more into that tomorrow. And before I finish off, I just want to say that these classes are in a merit of a refuah shlema, that my grandfather, Baruch Avram Aaron Ben Yenta, should get speedily recovered, and a refuah shlema. And I hope to see you another time.